Hey there, Mike Dixon here for the Excel Bootcamp number 3. This video we're going to get into formulas, doing a little bit more exciting things, really get into the meat of why we really even use spreadsheets and care about them. So let's get at it. So first thing I wanted to discuss was a little bit about the grid system that most spreadsheets use. So we already talked about how columns go up and down, rows go left and right, and columns are indicated by letters, right? So we have A, B, C, D, and rows by numbers 1, 2, 4, 3, 4, 5, whatever. So what this means is every single cell on your spreadsheet can actually be identified using this grid system with these two. Right, so if I come over here down to this column G and click on the second one down, so that's G2, right? So that cell is actually called G2. In fact, if you come over here to the left, there's this thing called a name box, G2. Right, in another video, we'll talk about how we can actually change that name to whatever we want it to be, and we might use that later. But right now, it's G2. Right, and if I go down one, that's G3. If I hit the down arrow key again, that's G4, G5. Each of these have a name. Right, so we can use those names. Later on, we'll see it in this video, in fact, to refer to the value in that cell, right, whatever's in that cell. So this is kind of like Battleship, right? So remember the old game Battleship where you say, I think I'm going to launch a missile at G5, and your opponent might have placed a ship there, right? So same idea. So it's a little grid system. All right, so let's just talk about some basics formulas in Excel. So add, subtract, multiply, divide, raise to the power. So easy. Whenever we start a formula, we always start with the equal sign, right? So if we type equal, that tells Excel that we're going to now put into a formula, right? So anything else we can just type, right? In fact, we can just type numbers. In fact, we can just start typing plus, whatever. It's not going to do anything. Oops, except that one. Unless we start with the equal sign, right? So equal, let's just say 5 plus 5 equals 5 plus 5. Hit enter, it just gives us the answer 10, right? So this is just a calculator that's going on behind here. So let's say equals 5 minus 3 for subtract, multiply, equals 5 star asterisk, which is on the 8 key, or in your keypad there's an asterisk. Let's just do something else. Divide equals 6 divided by 2. Divided by is just the upward slash, yeah, something like that. You see it there. And then raise to the power. So like if I want to square something or cube something or raise it to the 4th power or something, I use the little caret, right, which is the 6 button, shift 6, right? So equals 5 caret squared, look like that. So that's 5 squared, 25. All right, so that's pretty simple. So those are kind of our basics. So what I just did, I would usually tell people never to do. That is, we don't ever actually type numbers within the formula. Instead, best practice is to use the cells to hold our numbers and then type a formula in a different cell. That way, if we can easily see what's going on. So let me tell you what I mean by this. So here's a couple numbers that I just made up, 5 and 2. I want to add those two together. The easiest way is to type equal, and then see this 5 right here is in cell D2, right? So I can actually type D2. There it is. So when I type in D2, Excel knows, oh, you mean the cell D2. Yeah, that's what I mean. And it puts a little box around it just so that we know what, that it knows that, that that's what we mean. So I can do it again. Plus E2, right? And then I get another little box. This time it's green. Right, so that's it. Hit 2. 7, so hit enter, and I get 7. So what if I decide, well, really what I meant was 5 plus 3? Well, all I do is change the value in E2. So I just hit 3 and hit enter. And look what happened. It changed this value, right? It went and actually changed the calculation automatically, right? So instead of 5, what if I meant 10? There, it changed it. Very cool. So watch, now let's do this for all these real fast, get some practice. So 5, well, sorry, before I actually typed in, D2 or D3, right? You don't have to do that. If you hit equal and then use the arrow key, right, just move around. Every time I use the arrow key, it just sort of jets around. I can move around and say 5 minus and hit the arrow key again, 4, there, I'm done. So multiply 2 asterisk 5 divided by 1 slash 6 and then raise to the power 5, 5 to the 7th, like that. Great, so and then like I said, what if I want to change this? I didn't mean 7, I meant squared. 5 to the second power, so it's the same as 5 squared. Hit enter, it just automatically does it. So very cool. So one thing, I talked about this F2 button before. So let's see what happens now that we have formula. So if I hit F2, I'm automatically in the formula. When I hit F2, it does two things. It shows me these colors of these cells, which becomes very useful sometimes when I want to track to see what's going on, right? So if I get someone's spreadsheet, I'm not really sure what's going on in a formula, like where the numbers are coming from. I just see like D5, E5, and it's sort of hard to figure it out. If I hit F2, I can see automatically, oh, here are the formulas that it's doing something. Second, when I first hit F2 and then use my arrow keys, I'm actually inside the formula. See my little cursor? I'm just moving the arrow keys around. I'm inside the cursor. Now if I delete E5, I'm still inside the cursor, right? But if I want to like change, what was it, E5, if I wanted it to actually be E6, I hit F2 again, and then it allows me to move around outside of the cursor, like in the spreadsheet itself. All right? So then if I hit F2 again, I'm actually inside. Right, so every time I hit F2, it changes, I have to delete something, whether I can be outside the formula or inside the formula. So mess around with that a little bit, I think you'll understand what I mean. F2 toggles between inside the formula or outside the formula. Every time you have 2, it does something different. All right, great. So let's see. All right, so one more time we want to reiterate that the best practice is to actually keep numbers outside of your formulas, right? So the formulas are nothing but actually references to other cells. And this is sort of best practice, helps us to be more transparent in what we're doing and be able to figure out what's going on. Oh, the final thing, actually, before I move on about this, I wanted to say that, we could actually point these, to have sort of a series of these equations. Like, so for example, I wanted to say, really I want this one, plus this one, minus this one, divided by this one, raised to the power of this one. Like, I can do that, no problem. Right? So then the great thing, that's a crazy weird number, is if I change some number up here, right? So these are all formulas too, right? These are all formulas, and at the end there's a formula. If I hit F2, it has all these guys. And if I change this number right here, what's going to happen? Well, it doesn't really happen. Let's do this one. Let's change this one. This would make a difference, right? So if I change that, it actually changes this and changes this. What I mean by this is that now there's like sort of a whole series, a network of things that's going on, right? So if I change one thing up here, it actually trickles down all the way down to the bottom. So this is how you're going to create sort of bigger spreadsheets that are models, and you're going to model some sort of financial or some other type of phenomenon where I'm going to make a bunch of assumptions about some numbers, and then maybe later on I want to change these assumptions and see what happens to my answer. Well, this is how you're going to do it, right? You're just going to link cells to one another. Instead of embedding these numbers inside of cells where you can't see them, put them outside so you can actually see the cells, and then make the formulas just refer to these into these numbers. Okay, so let's do a little bit more complicated formulas, but not too bad. So here we go. Here we have several different divisions of some company, 1 through 6. Here's the sales for 4 different months. And then here's some other things we're going to calculate. And then over here we have some monthly adjustment. I'll talk about that in a minute for each month. And then some fixed costs. Talk about that in a minute. So first I want to find December to March sales for each of these 6 divisions. So let's just kind of make this the easy way. We'll do this a little bit differently in other videos, but we're just going to add all 4 of those together. Right? So C13 plus D13 plus E13 plus F13. Right? Great, so I did that one. So now I can go and do it again. This is going to be boring. All right, so I can do that again. What if I have a million divisions? Then I have to go through and do that a million times. No. So the cool thing, in fact, this is really exciting thing about spreadsheets, is that, and when we start using this kind of idea of pointing or referring to cells instead of typing numbers in, is that I can copy and paste things really easy. So let me show you. If I hit Control-C, copy, and then Control-V, paste, I actually get a different answer. So what's going on here, this 408? Well, let's hit F2, and we can see, oh, wow. So it actually did what I wanted it to do. It actually moved down and gave me December to March sales for Division 2. Right, just what I wanted it to. So what's going on here? If I hit F2 up here, it's where I wanted it. If I copy and paste it down, it actually just grabs those cell references and then moves it down 1, right? If I copy it down. Now, What happens if I copy it down 2? Let's copy it and then move it down like maybe 2 cells and hit Control V, paste. Well, it did the same thing. It just knows how far you are away from that original cell that you copied it, and it just moves all those cells, either down or right or left or whatever direction you went. That many number of cells, all of your references, right? So if I copied it to the right, it would move everything to the right. If I copied it to the left, it would move all those cell references to the left. So really cool. So what that means is if I even had a million divisions, I'd only have to type this formula once, copy and paste it all the way down, and then I'm done. Here's an even cooler trick. So once I type it in once, and I use my mouse, I come over here to see the lower right side of the cell. There's a little box. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a little box right here. If I hover over it, I get a plus sign. Now if I double click this plus sign, it'll actually copy what's in that top formula and paste it all the way down until there's nothing, until it sees that there's nothing to the left of it. So let me show you what I mean. So if I paste that down, it just copies this and pastes it all the way down. So watch, we look down here, hit F2, it copied that all the way down. Wow, really, really cool. Okay, so this is another reason why we want to use cell references. So here's the next one. So now assume that we actually want to subtract from this number some fixed cost. The fixed cost is going to be 25 right here. All right, so each one of these numbers, I want a new number here, which is just 25 less that. So here we go. So I can say that number minus this cell and hit enter. Right? Remember, I'm not going to type 25 in there because I want to be able to maybe change this number. I want everyone to know that this is why it's 25. December to March fixed cost. Oh, well, maybe someone will tell me it's actually 26 or whatever, and I can change it and everything will be changed. All right, so if I copied it once, and then what happens if I do my little trick before? Well, actually, it doesn't seem to work. So here's 408. 408 minus 25 is not 408. So what's happening? Ah, okay, so it moved this one down, but it also moved this one down. Well, that's not what I want. I want it to actually stay there. All right, so let me show you what I mean again. So come down here. Remember, the original formula up here was G13, this guy right next to it, minus C21. So if I go down like 6 times, what's it really done? Oops, is it just moved that down 6 times. Right, so now you can see what's going on. So how do we fix this? Well, there's this thing called an absolute cell reference. Let's delete these things. That we can tell Excel not to move the cell reference around when I copy and paste it. So how do I do that? If I hit F2, I get back into the formula. Well, you have to actually put dollar signs. I don't know why dollar signs are around both the letter and the column and the row. So if I do this, that actually locks that 25 in. All right, so dollar signs. So now let's try this. Now let's just do a double check. Hit F2. Yep, seems to be staying where it's supposed to be, right? So every time I hit F2, I see visually that 25 is still there, green, but this is being moved down. That's exactly what I want it to be doing. All right, so let me show you another kind of simpler way to do that. Let's delete those. Hit F2. So C21 is what it was, right? So once you have C21 in there, if I get in the middle of it and hit F4, it'll just put dollar signs around it. So F4 is the shortcut key. How do I remember F4? Well, the dollar signs is in the number 4, right? Shift 4 is the dollar sign. So F4 is right above that, right? So I hit F4. So how do I remember dollar signs for absolute cell references? So this one, I remember this because maybe there's you want to like keep your money, right? You don't want it to be moving around all over the place. You want to make sure you know exactly where it is at all the time. You want your bank to be really steady, right? Put your money in a bank and it's really safe and secure. You don't want to just be moving it all over the place, right? And so that money dollar sign is safe and secure. Okay, that means absolute cell reference. It's going to stay where I want it to stay. So maybe that'll help. Anyway, so that F4 button, right? And then just paste that guy down. Very cool. Let's get a little bit more practice with this. We're going to do this one called sales by adjusted by month. So what I have here is this monthly adjustment, which means these are the absolute sales, but there was some adjustment for each of these cells. So 25, it should have really been 20. 25 here should have been 20. 15 should have been 10. But in this month, instead of 12, it should have actually been 2. Right? So I'm going to subtract 10. 52 minus 10 should be 42. So hopefully you get the idea is that each of these months should be, you need to subtract this number up here. So let's try that. This one's going to be slightly different, but we're going to learn how to use this absolute cell reference in a different way. So here we go. I want 25 minus 5. Okay. Now I know right away if I hit enter and then just sort of paste this down, something weird. So first of all, wow, number value, that means something's wrong. Let me see what this hit up to. Oh, see, what's happened is this 5 has moved down. It's trying to subtract December sales from 25. Well, December sales is a word or letters. It's not a number, so it doesn't know how to subtract that. So how do we fix that? Let's go back up into here, hit F4, right, and that puts the dollar signs around C11, that 5. And then if I do my little trick here, now it actually seems to be working, right? So it's kept that 5 all the way. But I want to show you one more thing here. So if I copy this and paste it next to it, so if I actually, now what I want, 12 minus 10, right? So what's going to happen though if I copy this and paste it over? Well, it moved just this guy over, right? It moved from December to January because I moved this over, but it did not move this because this is an absolute cell reference, right? We kept it the same. So, but really what I want, this is another thing, you can actually drag these little cells around with your mouse, right? So yeah, I don't want to have to do that though. Let's imagine that I had maybe like 100 different rows like this. I only want to write the formula once and copy it all the way over and all the way down all at once. So let's fix that. So here we go. Let's try a different way. So here, starting all over, 25 minus 5. This time I'm going to hit F4, and then I'm going to hit F4 one more time. And what does this mean? Well, look, I only have the dollar sign around in front of the 11, right? So what that means is it's going to keep the row constant. Yeah, the row constant, but it will move the columns over, right? So let's see what that means. So C11. So let's copy this, paste it down. Let's make sure this is working the way we want it. Yep, it's still doing the same thing, right? Because it's staying with 11, and I haven't moved the columns over, so it's just kind of gone over. But if I copy and paste to the next column, what has it done? Well, it knows that I moved over, stayed with the 11, but it's moved down. So now if I can sort of use my little trick here, stayed with 10, very good. So you can see what, I'm just looking at this over here. So now what does that mean? Well, what that means is with this one formula, I can copy this, highlight all of these cells, I hit Control V, and it's done it all. Everything is done. With this one cell formula, it's now gone all of these, right? So I can check over here. This should be 8 minus 3. Yep, it is. Really cool. Alright, so one more way to do this. Let's imagine that there's some fixed cost for each division that's slightly different. And I want to come up with the sales again less the fixed cost for each division per month. Right? So what does that mean? So that means for this division for this month it's actually 25 minus whatever is in this cell. What do I see? 1. Right? And then for this division it's 25 minus 1.5. For this division it's 15 minus 2. And then for every month it's the same, right? But we just have to subtract that. So let's see what I mean by this. So here we go. December sales 25 minus what's in that cell. Right, so I can copy this down and it will work just the way I hoped it to. Right, it'll move down. But now if I move it over, what's going on? Well, I moved this over to January, which is what I wanted it to do. Right, started December, moved over to January. But now instead of subtracting from 1, it's subtracting this December sales, right? I really want this to be subtracted. Alright, so that's not going to be quite right. So what do I do? So again, if I hit F4, it makes it stay exactly where it is, right? It'll just subtract this one. Well, that's not what I want. I want it to actually move down, right, every time. So if I did this, what's going to happen? Well, now the second part of your equation stays right there. That's not what I want. I want it to move down. But our last way of doing this, if I hit F4 again, it stayed with the 13, which meant it would stay in our row. Instead, hit F4 one more time, and then it's going to just put the dollar sign in front of the M, right in front of the column. Right. So now watch. If I hit F4, it actually toggles through all 4 options. No absolute cell reference. Hit F4 again. Both the cell and the column. Right. That's an absolute cell reference. Hit F4 again. This is just a row cell, a row reference, absolute row reference. Hit F4 again. It's absolute column reference. Right. So all of these have their uses. Hit F4 again. It goes back to nothing, to regular. So I want absolute column reference in this case, which means I want the column to stay the same regardless of if I paste it, way to the left or way to the right, right? But I want it to be able to move up and down. So let's see what I mean. So paste this down. Yep, it's worked good. Copy, oops, wrong one. Copy, paste. Now what's happened? So it's moved over to January, but it's kept this column M the same. Right? So cool. Now we can do the same thing I did before. If I hit Control C and then hold my Shift button down, over key, arrow key to the right, and then arrow key down, and hit Control V, I just pasted all of it, and that's all. Did exactly what I wanted it to do, right? So here's one in the middle. Should be whatever the February sales are minus 2. That's exactly what it is. All right. So that is sort of the basics of formulas. So next time we're going to go into more of the formulas, more specific formulas that Excel has sort of some background stuff for. So stay awesome.